Hello all, and welcome to another edition of the Bastard Review. This week I'm looking at the Royal Rumble 2000. Rumbles are my favorite of the stipulation matches, and I'll explain what it is later in the program. The 13th annual Royal Rumble saw 19,200 fans pack into Madison Square Garden in New York, on January 23rd of 2000. The night's festivities opened with Kurt Angle cutting a promo in the ring prior to his match with an unnamed opponent who turned out to be Taz. Taz had just left the ECW, and this was his first appearance in the WWF, while Kurt had been in the WWF since late 1999 and had an impressive undefeated streak so far. This was a horribly short match, a little over 3 minutes, and I fail to see why Taz ended Kurt's streak, or why it ended at all. They'd meet a few other times in the next couple of months, but I doubt you could honestly say they had a rivalry or a feud. It's not really the best way to start the Rumble in my eyes. I'm giving this a 4 out of 10. Next, Michael Cole interviews Matt and Jeff Hardy about their long rivalry with the Dudley Boys. Terry, who was their valet at the time, talked about going out with them, but the brothers told her she was staying in the back. The Dudleys and the Hardys faced each other in the first ever tag team tables match. The stipulation stated that both members of either team had to be put through a table in order for the opposition to win the match, and there were no disqualifications. Bubba Ray and Devon cut a promo in the ring prior to the match and got the crowd riled up for what was to come. The Dudleys were more alumni of ECW that had recently moved up the ladder to WWF, and had made putting people through tables famous in ECW, although they definitely weren't the first to do it. The Hardys had been the first tag team the Dudleys defeated, and this feud was one of my favorites at the time. This match was fun to watch. Both teams were young and willing to bust up their bodies to wow the crowd. There were chairs and ladders thrown into the mix as well. Both Hardys drove Bubba Ray through a table, Jeff from the top rope and Matt from the top of the ladder he set up. Then the brothers set up a table on the ring mat and the guardrail, hoping to put Devon through it, but he moves at the last minute and Matt goes through the table instead. Jeff tries for a suicide dive onto Devon, but goes through a table as well. You'd think the match would be over here, but JR says that the Dudleys have to put their opponents through a table. Therefore, the match would go on. That seemed a little silly to me, and I'm surprised the bookers didn't take advantage of it. Regardless, this was a decent match. It would have been a little more special if it were a number one contenders match, and I definitely think this should have opened the pay-per-view. I'm giving this a 7 out of 10. Afterwards, we go backstage to Kurt Angle being looked at by paramedics due to Taz putting him in a Taz mission, which is a chokehold, which is illegal in wrestling. Next up is the Miss Rumble 2000 swimsuit contest. I don't think I need to tell you this was a waste of my time. I don't see why this was on the pay-per-view. This should have been on Raw, or not at all. Naturally, I fast-forwarded through this, and I'm not going to bother to rate it because I don't rate in the minus scores. Chris Jericho and Chyna were arguing backstage about who should carry the Intercontinental title belt out to their triple threat match. At the time, both of them were co-champions due to a double pinfall draw result when they faced each other for the title a month prior on SmackDown. Yeah, kinda silly in my opinion. Their third opponent was Hardcore Holly, and this match would decide who was the sole champion. This was a pretty good match, although I think it could have used a little more time, 5 or 10 minutes, to build towards the finale. I understand the in-ring time was short due to all three of them being in the Rumble later, but honestly, they should have either had this match or been in the Rumble, not both. Maybe save this for the No Way Out pay-per-view the next month. I really don't have much interest in Chyna or Holly, and the wrestling moves are horribly underwhelming, but I'm a big fan of Jericho and I was happy that he won the match. I'm giving this a 7 out of 10. Michael Cole interviews The Rock about his entry into the Rumble, and Rock cuts an amusing promo about winning it. Next up is the New Age Outlaws against the Acolytes for the Tag Team Championship. We're treated to a promotional package about their rivalry. And prior to the match, the New Age Outlaws go through their usual in-ring entrance, talking to the audience, but thankfully the Acolytes come running down and the match starts immediately. While neither team is my favorite, at least they are legitimate teams, and I can't complain about that. This was a surprisingly short match, and I don't see why it wasn't given time, especially since it was for the titles. Again, all 4 men are in the Rumble. Either give them this match and give them time, or put them in the Rumble. Don't have both. Very underwhelming and unimpressive. I'm giving this a 4 out of 10. Here's another thing that I didn't like. They had a promotional package for the rivalry between these two teams, and then had a 3-minute match. That just seems stupid to me. But I digress. After that, there's another promotional package about Mick Foley's trouble with Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. This was the high-profile feud going on at the time, and I loved it because Mick reverted from his Mankind persona to Cactus Jack for their impending street fight. This match came about when Mick questioned the fairness of Stephanie and Hunter dominating the company and doing what they pleased, namely walking all over other wrestlers to put themselves over. Recently, Hunter had gained the WWF title from Big Show, and Mick took the opportunity to challenge for the title here. What I find interesting is the similarities between Hunter and Stephanie's relationship and the current Vicky Guerrero-Edge relationship. It just shows that today's bookers have no creativity, and everything gets regurgitated over and over. This match, I was eager to see. Both men are entertaining in the ring, and this time around, Mick was in decent condition. A street fight is obviously Mick's playground, and during the match, both men use various items, including a 2x4 surrounded by barbed wire, the metal ring steps, and a big bag of thumbtacks. Triple H busted open his forehead early in the match, and by the time he put Mick through the announcer's table, his face was a crimson mask. Hunter had also injured his leg when he suplexed Mick onto a pallet and the piece of the wood dug into his calf. This was gruesome and painful to watch as each man went out of their way to beat the other and gain the upper hand. But cringing is half the fun of a wrestling match, especially with this stipulation. The Rock made an appearance helping Mick by laying out Triple H with a chair, but ultimately it didn't help Mick regain the title. Triple H kept it after sending Mick down into a pile of thumbtacks with a pedigree. This is what a high-profile match deserves to be. And while I'm again disappointed Mick didn't win, I was highly entertained, and it was given a huge amount of time. I'm giving this a 10 out of 10. Please tune in for part 2 when I continue to review Royal Rumble 2000.